First off, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's premiere webisode of Office 365 Pulse with Jennifer Ann Mason. As a SharePoint Server MVP, Jennifer has spent the last several years consulting others on best practices for implementing business solutions using SharePoint technologies. She is passionate about SharePoint and loves using out-of-the-box features to bring immediate ROI to her clients. She has worked with a range of companies, leading teams responsible for design, implementation, and maintenance of SharePoint environments. When she isn't writing her slide at her new company, Rackspace Hosting, Jennifer focuses on strategy, planning, governance, and sharing her knowledge with the SharePoint community. After a recent move to the Lone Star State from Ohio, where she is the founding member of the Columbus, Ohio SharePoint Users Group. Jennifer is learning how to be a true Texan, cowboy boots and all. Take it away, Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer, I just think you might need to enable your mic. I'm not sure your mic is enabled. Sorry to interrupt. I don't think any of us are hearing you. The joys of live television on a debut here. There we go. Now I hear your laugh.
Can y'all hear me now?
We're good. Yeah, hey.
Well, that's funny. We only tested the audio at least 3 times before we got here, and it's still messed up. Okay, we tried. Okay, well, hey, everybody, again. I was just saying that we're so super excited to have you joining us for our first episode of The Pulse. And so today's guest of honor is Mr. Dan Holme. So Dan is one of my favorite people in the SharePoint community. I just love getting to talk to him about really all things technology. Kind of started out with SharePoint, known each other for a few years now just through various things, and he is one of the awesome co-founders of IT Unity, which thank you very much for hosting our show. So I don't know, Dan, if you want to kind of give you a quick introduction about you and a little bit about your love of SharePoint and the community.
Sure, yeah. So I'm, first of all, coming to you from Maui, Hawaii today, which is my home. I'm lucky enough to be spending some time here after normally spending my life traveling the world working with customers and speaking at events. I've been an MVP for about 9 years now. I'm going on 10, and across Active Directory, SharePoint, now Office 365. I've been a consultant for 20 years plus now, and am really happy to be leading IT Unity now. That's my full-time gig, as Jennifer knows, and as many of you know. And our goal at IT Unity is really to help you solve problems with technology. So we're here to provide you information, expertise, resources, training, content, whatever it takes to help you succeed with these technologies in the ever more agile and fast-paced and sometimes painful world of cloud technologies. So we're thrilled to debut Unity Vision, which is our online video capability. And Jen, your Pulse show is just a phenomenal debut for us. We're really excited because I think this not only demonstrates what we can do and what we can reach through video, but also demonstrates the importance of the cloud to the actual business and to end users. And there's no one better than you to really share that voice and bring that message to the market. So thanks for launching the show, and thanks for including me on the first show.
Oh yeah, this is going to be great. So I'm assuming you guys can all see my screen. Somebody let me know if you guys don't see our Sway presentation. We thought it would be kind of fun to use Sway today to show as we just kind of walk through our talking points. And so Lyman's going to be adding the Sway link into the resources list so you can access this later, and then we'll also get it posted to IT Unity once we're done. But we kind of wanted to kick off the inaugural show and kind of talk a little bit, kind of introduce ourselves already. I am like Dan, I've been doing IT not for quite 20 years. I'm probably getting close to that 10-year mark, though. That makes me kind of feel old. I don't like to be able to say I've done things for 10 years now, but I think I've been doing consulting for quite a bit of time right now. I spend most of my time with the business. So anything that people can do, I kind of like to say anything you can do um, without syntax and without semicolons is kind of where I like to live. It's kind of funny. I was playing with something today. One of the features that we're going to talk about today, one of the last ones on our list, the access stuff, I was playing with it today, and my husband was asking me over lunch what I thought about it, and I was like, well, there's a little too many syntax and semicolons that are required to actually make it work. So I kind of spend my time really just trying to empower end users to be able to quickly and easily use the technology that's available there. And so kind of gets into why did we create this show? And I think that last year was one of the first years that we actually saw Microsoft deliver on that promise to do constant innovation. So I don't know about you, Dan, but when Microsoft came out and said that they were going to constantly be evolving and constantly pushing new features, I kind of thought they were full of it. And I didn't really think that we would see what that actually looked like. So did you have any of those same feelings?
Totally. I think the first really interesting message I heard from Microsoft on this point was in 2012. I was involved with a discussion early, or actually maybe it was in 2011 actually. Yeah, 2011, early discussions about what would become SharePoint 2013 and Office 365. We were in a room and we had the leadership of the product team there, and they basically said something to this effect. We've been spending the last 4 years building the clouds, Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics. Yeah. We've had 8,000 man equivalents working on these efforts. And now that these clouds are built, you're going to see us start innovating in ways that will blow your mind. So like they told us that in 2011, and I was like, okay, that's a good promise. If you're going to turn 8,000 engineers and business people over onto actually innovating, that'll be interesting. But I wasn't really sure they'd be able to do it. And yeah, boy, have they ever. For better or for worse, we're seeing a lot of innovation now.
Yes. And that's kind of exactly where the basis of this show is coming from. So, it's all about keeping people informed about the changes. Even as I started prepping for the show and looking at, okay, what has just been released since January? There's just things that are coming out that it's kind of like, okay, they're just constantly making changes. It is very difficult to stay on top of all of the pieces. So what better way than to get to hang out with some of my closest friends and just get to chat through what the changes are, give people information, and then help them go out and find some other information. So the show is going to be a little different than other shows. I know there's a couple of really great avenues right now to get information on Office 365. Specifically, I know and it's more of Office 365 and Azure, but the cloud show that CJ and Andrew Connell work on, I mean, that's really great information, but it's definitely more developer focused. And so one thing that's going to make this show a little bit more different is it's going to be more focused on just the end users, just the day-to-day tools that people are using. And then just kind of focus on how it impacts the business and the different things that are there. So we'll probably get a little technical from time to time and jumping in and definitely pushing out. And, if we have a slow week with releases, we might actually be able to demo some of the new product features and different things along those lines. But we really just kind of want to focus on how does this impact the users, and do I care? Should I care? What should I do? Because as fast as Microsoft is releasing things, people can't always be changing how they're doing things as an organization. It can't be constant chaos and change. And so you have to kind of pick and choose what new tools are going to be used and not used. And so it's a very interesting dynamic. I think the world of IT is going to change as we look at helping our users make the best decisions. We're going to have to really be able to hone in on understanding what problems exist within the organization, so that when a new tool comes out, if it doesn't necessarily address a problem, maybe it's one of those ones that we put on the back burner. And we don't have to be using every new feature that gets pushed out immediately, because that may actually make it harder for our users to work. So I think it's a very interesting new dynamic that's out there right now. Just a change in IT, I guess.
I think you've hit a real sweet spot too, because it used to be that IT would know what was coming first. They'd get the betas and they'd be able to play with things, and now it's the users that get it first. All of a sudden, there's this new link in the app launcher for a new capability, and the user goes and tries it, runs into problems, and then goes to IT and says, "Hey, I just created this group. I didn't really mean to create that. How do I delete it?" And then IT goes, "I've never even heard of groups. I haven't played with it yet." And then if IT even gets to it, they're like, "Oh, well, you can't delete groups yet. That wasn't part of the minimum viable product." So there's a lot of challenge. And so what impacts the end users, the focus of your show really ends up impacting IT.
Exactly.
And ends up, of course, defining what the business does with technology from a strategy perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's changes, and it's one of those changes that I think you can classify it as. One of my friends in college used to always say it's not, it's not right or wrong, it's not bad or good, it's just different. And I think this is one of those scenarios. It's just different. We have to look at things differently. I think groups and kind of getting into 2014 in review, it kind of segues perfectly into that. Groups was one of the major changes in 2014, but it was very disruptive when it came out, because you now have a team site where I can have a calendar and I can have discussions and I can store documents, or I could do that in Yammer, or I could come over here and do it in groups. So now I've got one tool that's, not fully integrated with all of the other pieces, but yet it's a new way to do things. And so it's interesting, and I think that even goes into what are some of the biggest struggles now is defining, what is the best tool for the right job at the right time, and how do we do that out? I mean, I remember when I first started working, we were actually launching Office 2007 in one of my first assignments, and this was before I was into consulting, and we were going through and doing it, and IT had it, and we did months and months of training before we ever gave it to anyone. And now it's just a totally different paradigm. There's not months and months of training. There's not a ton of prep. It's kind of like, here are these tools, and oh yeah, it only does some things, but maybe you can speak a little bit more about that concept of the minimal viable product and how they're doing those releases now. You mentioned that just a little bit ago.
Yeah, I think that's a really key new thing for everyone to understand about the new world, and we really did first experience it in 2014. The way Microsoft is releasing products right now is now like a lot of other cloud vendors, where they release something that they know isn't exactly the end story. It's the first step in a journey, but it delivers what they believe is functionality and business value that they can then see how the market responds to it, see whether it's worth investing in and taking to the next step. And so they deliver services using a concept, the relatively standard industry concept called minimum viable product. And that means that it meets what they've defined as the minimum standards in order to get it out the door. And then they start looking at what they call telemetry, the metrics. How many people are using it? How many clicks do they get? They don't necessarily collect your personal information about what groups do you create and all that. But yeah. Oh boy, it's one of those words you need to start drinking every time you hear it this year. I can promise at Ignite you're going to hear it a lot. So they get the minimum viable product out the door. Then they start measuring the use of it, and that then helps them understand what features are working, which ones aren't, whether the product and service deserves more investment. And the real trick for Microsoft is making sure that the minimum viable product is strong enough that they can actually get good measurements out of it. Because if it's not strong enough and people don't use it, and they see that no one's using it, they might decide the market doesn't want it, instead of really understanding that it's just not done yet. And then the flip side for the customer is you get this feature that depending on your work scenario, you may say, well, this is kind of half baked, and you're right, it is half baked, but it's cookie dough is a good thing. It's just not a cookie yet.
I don't think I've ever heard it that way. My children would agree. They always like to eat the cookies before I bake them. I love it.
Exactly. So we get a product like at Groups is a good example where we see where Microsoft is going with it. They make clear when they release the minimum viable product what the goal of it is. But then they don't necessarily do things that some customers, or perhaps most customers, would think would be important, like being able to delete one easily, or other things like that. So
Yeah, being able to admin it, anything to do to admin or set permissions or control at that control level is difficult. Those seem to always come in future phases of the product versus this MVP. So I guess
Yeah,
one other thing
they
that we
made
could,
it clear: feature first, control second.
yes,
Sorry.
which is interesting. I mean, chicken or egg. I mean, you kind of need both. So it becomes very interesting. But most of the things are rolling out through the concept of first release. So in order to get access to them, you have to go into your Office 365 tenant and turn on first release. That takes about 24 hours once you turn it on for all of the things to be pushed. And then they even do stages in first release. So some people are part of first release. I know I've been hit with this one too. It took me about 2 weeks to get groups after they came out, and I wanted them so quickly. But it took about 2 weeks before I got them, and that's because even with first release, they do stages of first release. So it's kind of we're going to push it out to the people that say they want it in small doses, and then we're going to keep continually making changes, which goes for a very interesting, it's just changing. The world is just changing. It's in 2014 was actually like, they kept telling us in 2012 and 2013 that this is the way it was going to happen, but I don't really think they delivered on it until 2014. And so it was a very interesting year to watch when products would come out. And then I think one of the other things that I found really awesome about 2014 is that, well, I want to be careful how I say this because I don't always feel that they hear what we're saying, but I totally feel that they're listening. And so Microsoft is trying in so many ways to get our feedback. So whether it's through site telemetry, the Yammer group, and so we have a poll because I was curious to see how many people that are attending the session are actually part of the Yammer group. So Lyman, if you want to bring that poll over now, find out, get a poll and see who's on, who's in the Yammer group. And so we thought that'd be interesting to see who is doing that. And there's also all these concepts of user voice sites. And so what do you think about that, Dan? Do you think it's been a year of more open communication? Wow, there's a lot of people that are using that Yammer group. So I'm going to go ahead and broadcast that.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I was watching the poll too. What was your question, Jen? Whoops, I think we lost your audio, Jen.
Oh, are you still there, Dan?
Now I hear you. What was your question? Sorry.
Okay. I was asking, what did you think about communication and how has it been this year? Has it been different for you in just the rate of which Microsoft has been communicating and pushing information out there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a change we all can celebrate. In my experience for 20 years, Microsoft has always said they're listening, but the again, like you said, whether they were hearing it or not was another question,
Yeah.
and whether they were asking the right questions. And I think we definitely see through the Yammer network, which by the way is important to mention. You know, that's not just a place for the community to gather. Microsoft puts their engineers, the people who actually write the code, into that Yammer network, so they're really connecting the people using the service with the people writing it, and that's amazing. And then on the dev side, there's user voice. Microsoft is really making especially in the Office 365 and SharePoint space, they're sending really good people to public events. So whether it's upcoming SP TechCon, for example, or SharePoint Fest, or any of the upcoming events, even outside of Ignite, they're sending really good people. They're listening, and that's a huge change. Really excited about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's been fun. So for those that are not in the group, that's one of the links that we have down in the resources section. So if the 25% that aren't in the Yammer group, I might not be pointing into the right area. I think bottom right, maybe bottom right or left. I don't know. But you guys should definitely check out that Yammer group. It's one of those things, like, I like to tell people to be super involved in the community. But if you totally want to stalk it and just read people's information, there's a lot of good information that you can find there, especially when they release. So one thing I've noticed about 2014 is that they tend to come out with an Office blog post about it. And in the Office blog post, it points to technical information and then also points to whatever the scheduled Yam Jam is. And during that Yam Jam, that is when all of the product team is available to talk to people. So if there's a new feature that's out and you kind of want to get more information about it, so far those have been the best methods to get that information. And so even if it's just something that you're listening to and maybe not even participating in, or even going back and reading the transcripts from it, it gives you the names, if nothing else, the names of people that you can go into Yammer and call them out when you have a question about something later. So that's a little trick. So I definitely think there's a ton of value in that. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I've talked a little bit about 20. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, quick question. I was just going to ask. Okay, so some of the meta things. We saw minimum viable products. We saw new channels for feedback. We saw first release. What are some, and we talked about groups as a specific example. Do you want to hit some of the other sort of big releases as feature-wise that came out at the end of the year?
Yeah, definitely. So I've got my favorites. I'm not sure what your favorites are, but my favorite was the Office video blogs. The Office video stuff is just genius to me. I love it. I love how it is a combination of Office 365 to deliver the content, which is good at delivering content, but it's not relying on SharePoint to actually render the content. It's teaming up with Azure Media Web Services. So I think that's another great combination of where you get the powerhouse of Microsoft behind the scenes, that you're able to kind of pull it all together and get one complete solution, but you're getting it all through Office 365. So that's one of my other favorites. And then one that I know that you've done actually a couple of webinars on yourself, which I think you're going to guess would be Delve. And that's another big one that's come up. So do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. Yeah, Delve and Office Graph would also be on the list for me. Office Graph, if you're not familiar with it, is basically the idea that Office 365 pays attention to who you are, who you're related to in your organization, managers, colleagues, who you talk with, and more importantly, and also importantly, the content that everyone is looking at, what's important to you, what you've read, what you've opened, what you've interacted with, and what your colleagues have done. And by doing that, it's able to build an understanding of the relationships between individuals and content, very much like Facebook starts building an understanding of who you are and what you like and what you're shopping for. But now in a truly enterprise social networking model, that data is able to be surfaced through applications, and Delve is the first, where Delve then presents to you information that is important to you, might be important to you. So it's both a find tool and a discovery tool that starts to hint at the power of Office Graph. And I think Office Graph is an unbelievably strong differentiator for Microsoft in the enterprise space. I don't think anyone, including maybe even Microsoft, has fully understood the potential of it. Certainly not, we're not there as far as realizing the potential of it. A lot of that will come this year. But that's just huge and was an awesome innovation this last year. So groups, Delve, Delve and Office Graph, and videos were certainly three of these major features that were released in the new model last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what's coming, and that kind of even brings us to our next piece of looking forward. You kind of hit the nail on the head, I think, with Delve and Office Graph. I don't think the potential has been realized, but it's like this glue that you're kind of putting all of these things together, but it's almost proactive. And so it's something that just happens based on who you are and what you're doing, and it makes it just a lot easier to work together. So that one, I think, is probably one of the things that I see happening the most with 2015. I think there's probably some other things. I think we're going to see groups really take off in 2015. I could be wrong with this prediction, but I think that groups are going to continue to develop past the MVP. So we've got, that minimally viable one right now, and it feels very segregated, but I think we're going to start to see some new features inside of groups that it's going to naturally tend itself to help us know when to use one over the other. And I think so those are some of the big things that I'm watching for in 2015. Do you have any predictions or things that you're just thinking are really going to happen in 2015?
Yeah, I'll make a couple of predictions. I'm sure you have some as well. I think, and by the way, we are watching the chat feeds and the questions, so we'll make sure to come back and answer those things as well. Um, I think in 2015, I think we'll obviously continue to see a lot of innovation, and I think there's a couple of areas that Microsoft has made clear that the innovation is going to happen in. The first being hinted at with the Office videos, which is the idea that Microsoft is going to start creating new ways for us to create intranets. So
Right.
Office videos is kind of a video-based intranet. It was a minimum viable product, and just to hit a couple of the questions, there are certain file formats it doesn't work with yet that I'm sure it will. There's a lot of features that aren't there that certainly are on the roadmap for Microsoft, but it's quite capable. The one thing it isn't is public facing, and I don't know whether that'll ever change because that's a scalability issue for Microsoft. But it's not meant to be a public facing
Right.
YouTube yet. There might be eventually the ability to share videos as you share other content in SharePoint, which is different than public. It's external
Right.
user. But I think Microsoft has hinted that there's going to be more next-gen portals, they're calling them, which is the idea
Yep.
that there'll be intranet experiences that they provide to us. So that's that then because a lot of organizations, just like they fight to build a video portal, and now Microsoft has sort of given us a pretty decent solution for that. They also fight to
Yeah.
create good intranets, and even to understand what a good intranet is.
Yeah, definitely.
What else do you think is coming in 20?
I like that. I hope we're going to get more into the solutions type scenario. There's just certain things that everyone does, and it would be
Yeah.
nice. Dare I say it? I'm hoping for something with forms and maybe some workflow. Dare I say it? I mean, I'm
Well,
hoping that we're going to
Microsoft
see
said
that.
Forms is coming. They
Yes,
gave us
and
fossil
I
in
saw that
the
they did
SharePoint
that
conference.
and put back into the roadmap. So rest assured, when any news comes on forms, you will hear about it on Pulse. We'll probably have a whole panel for that episode, um, talking about forms and what is coming. So hopefully we'll see some stuff there. I think that they've got the framework for a lot of really awesome, powerful solutions, and now I just want to see some of those MVPs just get some added features that give it like, oh, it can do everything I need, but, and I'm hoping that 2015 will get some of those buts, just implemented so that we're able to, build out some better solutions.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think I
so
constantly get asked, what happened with the Fabulous 40, right, from SharePoint 2007. And I'm not saying that we need to go back to that, but I do think the product needs to have out of the box the ability to address certain workloads to a level that people go, okay, I can see the potential here, even if it means I need to build something or buy an app to really achieve what
yeah,
I want to. At least I can see that this is possible and I can get some immediate value out of it. Since we just
exactly.
started IT Unity a year ago, we're completely in the cloud. So I'm seeing this immediately. We're trying to build a business in Office 365, and I'm seeing where the pain points are for us. And like if we had like maybe 6 or 8 things, it would be an instant business solution for us.
Yes,
But right now
yes,
those aren't there yet. Hopefully
totally.
we'll see those.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. Maybe we all need to unite and go to Yammer and tell Microsoft that that's really what we need. Um, just tell them that Dan and Jennifer sent you. They'll love that. That'll just give them some credibility. They'll listen, but not really. I
Yeah.
joke. Um,
Also,
um,
OneDrive.
well,
We know OneDrive's going to get fixed this year.
yes, they have promised that. They have promised that one. So waiting to see if they can deliver on that one. That should have been one of my poll questions. How many people have had sync issues with? Maybe next time. Yeah, we could probably do a whole show dedicated
That would be 100% yes.
to OneDrive. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm looking forward to the OneDrive. Definitely looking forward to the OneDrive updates. I don't know about you, Dan, but I use OneDrive personally, and then I use the enterprise versions of it, and I'm constantly going back and forth, and it's like the biggest love-hate relationship I think I've had in 2014. I absolutely love it, and it makes my life easier, and then I absolutely hate it because I've lost a document. So I think I love and hate OneDrive with probably the same amount of passion. It looks like
Yeah,
others have had
same
that
here.
too. I think
And it can
Daniel
be.
called it the nightmare of Office 365.
Yeah, it's going to be a good solution this year. I do think, they've said publicly we're looking at the ability to really deal more effectively with things that have been shared with you, kind of like Dropbox does, where you can sync those things, going across devices, having one engine. They've really promised the world, and I'm certainly expecting it, and I would certainly hope that it's by Ignite. I don't know, but I think it needs to happen soon. What about Skype for
Yeah.
Business? That's another big change in Office 365.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that one. That one I'm again watching to see. I mean, from everything I've read, I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be just a renaming of Link to where you really don't see any noticeable changes. But I love the concept of having one tool across both of them. So I'm kind of watching that one and excited about what's going to happen. What's going to happen with that one. So hopefully, again, these are all topics that as soon as we get more information, I see kind of in the chat window, there's some questions on if we have more information on a lot of these topics. And as we get closer to things being available, we will definitely be able to share things as we find them. And I also think we can probably get some Microsoft folks once we get this show up and going. I bet we could get some good guests coming on and talking about those different topics as we get closer to some of these things being realized. So definitely stuff we will be watching for in 2015.
Yeah, and I think it will also. I think Jen, it would also be great. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
We have a little delay between us. I apologize. I was going to say, Jen, it would also be really cool to get Microsoft folks. Well, first of all, let me make a comment and then a suggestion. As hopefully all of you watching the show know, one of the other big communication tools Microsoft now has given us is the roadmap. The easiest URL for that is office.microsoft.com/roadmap, and we can add that to the Pulse resources as well. But that really does tell it gives us what Microsoft is saying publicly about the features that are just being launched, that are coming out. And I think there's a lot of those in development announcements that Microsoft is probably willing to say a little bit more about than what they can actually detail in the tool itself, in the roadmap tool. So I think one thing that would be really cool, Jen, is when we get these Microsoft team members on to let them flesh out their perspective on some of these in development capabilities and help us get a little bit of a heads up on those. So for example, you mentioned forms on SharePoint lists. That is on the public roadmap. I'm sure we could get some team members to say, here's a review of what we're thinking about it for, and an update.
Exactly. And we might even be able to get some of the OneDrive folks. I know that's a huge topic, and even get some of them out here, and then still keep the focus on the everyday usage of it and sync issues and stuff like that. So Dan, maybe you and I can take that as our homework to try to kind of get those down. And again, those calls always get timed as we get closer to releases, and so we will keep our eye out for that. And at the end, we're going to ask send out a evaluation from the show today, and if there's certain topics or something like that people want to see, they can definitely put those into the comments, and then we can work to follow up and kind of craft shows around those different topics. But we're kind of getting in halfway into the show now, so I thought we could switch and start talking about some of the things that have actually released just this first week of January, which has been interesting. There's two different ways things are releasing. There is the Office blog post, which seems to be where all the hoop and hurrah comes. And then there is the message center, where it seems to be the dun dun dun, something's going away. And so this one hit the end of December, but it didn't actually make it into the message center until January. So I counted this one on the list, and this is going to be an interesting one. So Lyman, if you want to bring out our second poll, I'm curious to see out of the people in the audience, how many people are impacted by the announcement about public sites. And so the announcement basically is that anyone that's using a public site currently up until February will be able to keep their site for up to 2 years. But starting in February 2015, the public site option is going away. You won't be able to create public sites inside of Office 365. And really, the only piece of information we've gotten from Microsoft is that they promise to have new options available soon. But that's really all that they've said. So we're starting to see how I don't know.
Story here.
Yeah. So this one's interesting. What do you think about this one, Dan?
I think there's some backstory, and I'm really looking forward to the announcements when they come. I think it's relatively well known that this announcement broke in early December. A blogger posted it and created enough of a stir that people were starting to have a discussion about it. And I don't think Microsoft was quite honestly ready to talk about it yet. Clearly, it was a real thing. The public sites are going away, and as Microsoft says, they are going to have guidance. But I think they were caught off guard. And I actually feel really sorry for Microsoft on this one, because Microsoft really is working hard to guide us and to help us make these transitions, because they're learning what works and what doesn't in the cloud. They're learning from telemetry. They're learning from looking at their service and seeing, wow, this public-facing website, this just isn't the right solution. The way we built it on SharePoint maybe isn't the right way. I don't know. And I feel bad that their hand was kind of forced, and they had to give us bad news without having good news to go with it, because I do expect there is some good news. I have no inside knowledge at all about it, but I do expect there's good news. And me personally, I mean, we don't use SharePoint for our public site at IT Unity. It didn't meet our requirements. There's a lot of other options that are out there. My small business and my personal sites run on WordPress, as a lot of sites on the internet do. So there's a lot of options out there, Wix, Squarespace. It'll be interesting to see what Microsoft suggests, and whether it'd be really cool if there were some tie-ins, where if I had lists or calendars on SharePoint, I could expose them on a public site somewhere, even if it was on some other platform. But I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think about what they did with the video portal, and how they made it so easy to take advantage of the right tool for the job. Like when you look at the video portal, rendering videos in SharePoint is not the right tool for the job, but using Azure Media Services is, but the entry point was still SharePoint. So I'm hopeful that something is going to come from it. I like you, I have no insider information on this one. I'm a little sad. I mean, my public website is out there. So if you go to www.jenniferannmason.com, I store all my presentations out there. For what I was using it for, it was perfectly easy. It was no extra cost to me. Very easy to use. Very simplistic website. I mean, there was nothing spectacular about the website, nor do I do a lot of tracking like you would on a website. If you're doing a website for a business, there's usually things that you're looking at doing and things you're looking at tracking. And so those weren't in my requirements for my personal website. So I kind of see the pros and cons of each of it. A little disappointed that they don't have another solution, but I think if you read between the lines, it totally felt like to me that they were forced into making an announcement before they were ready because something leaked. And that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah, and I almost want to say to our community and our listeners, when you hear that kind of thing, on this instance, I feel really bad for Microsoft, and I kind of am a little bummed at the blogger who broke it. I don't think it was particularly responsible, and I think we as a community need to help and not join in the fray and not pile on to something that's being put out there without any real backing. And give Microsoft time to come up with answers in this case.
Yeah, they did say, though, that they would have an answer for us in January. And I'm hoping that they come through with that and have additional details for us in January. So they did say that, so I'm hoping that. So it looks like it's an interesting mix. It looks like it's almost split between, using them and the very sad, or never use them. There are several that use them and are happy to see them go. I kind of fall in that camp as long as it gets replaced with something better or something different. So, I mean, it's a very interesting very interesting results, kind of what I expected. So we'll follow this one closely. So when news breaks, we'll definitely include it in future shows so we can kind of talk through that and even talking through what are the other options. In my mind, really the only thing that you can do is if you're impacted. Well, first off, from an end user perspective, you might not know if you're impacted or not. So you might have to ask around, find out if you guys are using a site. And to be perfectly honest, if you're using a site right now, I would kind of just chill out and wait and see what Microsoft says. I would not jump to make any other decisions until they at least come out with their responses. I would at least give it until February 1st because they promised to have an announcement by the end of January. So I would at least give them that. And then if you still don't hear something and need to start moving through, then potentially start looking at other options. But I wouldn't be too worried about it yet. When they came out and said what they were doing with forms, and you look at how they, killed off InfoPath for all nice terms, they at least came out with, here's the approach that we're going to take, and we know it's going to be a long time till we get to these other places. And we haven't fulfilled on those places yet, but they were very clear and prescriptive. And if you look back at all the other things that they've done, they've been very clear and prescriptive, but not on this one. So I think it's kind of one of those that you just have to wait and see what's going to happen. And I think all things point to there being a better solution to replace this when they're ready to announce that, whether that's, use this approach to do it, whether there's some type of app that can fill the gap, whether there's some type of, other combination of tools. So that's kind of my guidance, is to just kind of hang tight for a little bit and see what's going to happen. Do you have any other words of wisdom you could pass on to people, Dan?
Oh, I'm going to give the least wise words I've ever said, which is, if you want a public site, don't start it in Office 365 this month.
That's true.
Don't jump on just to get one. Just say no.
Yeah, just say no at this point. But if you're already using it, just go get a cup of coffee and wait a little bit. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so that one wasn't as exciting. Some of the other ones we get to talk about are a little bit more exciting. So one of the other big changes that they made is OneNote. This one's pretty cool because if you're using the OneNote Metro app or the Windows app or anything on the tablets, you used to not be able to use secured sections. And so you could only use that on the client install. So they've recently made that change so that the app is going to support secured sections. And so this one's just kind of neat. You can do your sections if you're not working in it for a little bit of time. It will lock itself. And it handles the thumbnails and different things like that differently so that someone can't, look at your tablet and see the secured sections that are there. But I thought this one was kind of neat. This is just another small step. So this is typically something that you'd only see when the next version of OneNote came out. It's not something that's going to happen slow iterative changes. And so I think this is a great example of the types of features that we can now start to see rolling out on a fairly regular basis. So are you a big OneNote user, Dan, or are you like an Evernote or some of the other tools that are out there?
I'm thrilled to see this. I use Evernote for more data-driven list sort of scenarios because it pivots data more effectively than OneNote. But I use OneNote for everything related to documentation, note gathering. The real content-heavy stuff goes in OneNote. I'm a huge OneNote fan. We make major use of it at IT Unity. I use the client version, and then we use the web version. And I haven't had a chance to play with this feature yet. I had a question that I don't know if you know, but if you have protected sections, how does it deal with search? Like the little search box in OneNote, will it actually give you content from protected sections, or once you protect them, since it's password protected, does it lose the ability to do search?
Yeah, I'd have to go out and test that to know for sure. I think it all depends on if you've got it unlocked. Like, so if it's opened and you're working with it, right, I think it might have a different, but I'm not totally sure on that one. It's a great question, though. I don't know if anyone in the audience has had a chance to test that. specific feature out. Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy is saying it's security trimmed, and so I'm sure that's sort of what you were just getting at. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that one's yeah, this one is interesting. I use OneNote heavily, but I use the client OneNote. I don't necessarily use the app. And some of that just has to do with the fact that if they don't behave the same, I'm going to just go open the client one. And in most cases that works for me because of the device that I carry. I'm carrying my Surface around, so it's pretty, I mean, it's one or the other. It doesn't matter to me as much. So I'm kind of excited about this to get the feature parity back up to the same. And one really cool thing to note about this is we talked about feedback and Microsoft listening. The OneNote team has a user voice site directly related to OneNote. And so if you're a big OneNote user and you have a lot of things going on and you want to give your feedback, you can definitely head out to this user voice site. And the way that the user voice site works is that when you log in, you get a certain number of votes. So if somebody has shared an idea that you're like, I need this, you get to put your votes with it. And then the product team can go in there and kind of see and vote on different things, give comments. I've even seen them go in and say, this seems like an interesting idea, but what use cases does this hit to make sure that we're understanding what the issue is? So I think it's really neat that the OneNote team has a user voice site out there. So definitely, if people in the show are big OneNote users, they should definitely go over there, check that out, and give their feedback. Which is pretty cool. So that was one thing. The other
one, OneNote user, become one.
Oh,
I was going to say, if you're not a OneNote user, become one. I think it's the most powerful app in the suite.
Yeah, and I think it's come a long way. So if you've checked it out before and you didn't like it, totally worth checking it out again to see if it's something that you can do. So this one has been kind of fun too. This next update that we have about the Android Office update. And so I am not an Android user. My husband has an Android tablet that he's been evaluating, and he just installed this. And I've told a couple of my coworkers to go out and get the app. But basically, a couple of months ago, they opened up the Office for Android preview. And it wasn't necessarily invite only, but you had to request to join their Google page. You had to kind of request to be in it. They would get you the install and you could play with it and give feedback. There's a whole big Yammer group that's going on about this. And just recently this week, the response has been so overwhelmingly good that they opened up the preview to anyone. So anyone that's running an Android tablet or an Android device, as long as I've got the requirements over here. So it's got to be an ARM-based Android tablet with KitKat or Lollipop between 7 and 10 inches. You can go to Google Play and you can download the Office preview. And so that's the full Office suite where you can edit it and make changes to all of the documents, read, edit for that Office suite. So that's kind of cool. I don't know, Dan, are you an Android user at all?
I'm not. I'm iOS and Windows. So I've promised to limit myself to two OSs. I test Android now and then.
Oh, you're better than me. I'm straight Windows. I just know how it works, so it just works and it's fine. But like I said, yeah, my husband was just installing this last night, so maybe I can get him to come on and talk about it one day, talk about the different things he's doing. But I think it's good to know, like if you're in a IT department at an organization, you very likely in the world of BYOD, you have very likely got many Android devices out there. So this would be something that you could definitely take note of and push out to make sure that people know that this is available. They can test it, see how it works, and different things like that along those lines. I know one of the guys that I work with over at Rackspace, he has an Android, and he's actually purchased a couple of different Office editing apps that they have because he was never happy with the Microsoft version. So I sent him over the link to this yesterday and had him install it, and so it'll be interesting to see in the next week or so if he's able to use it or not, and if he likes it. So it's all good stuff. So it's neat to see them opening it up, just letting people have a preview.
It's amazing. Yeah. Even just the cross-device thing is so amazing, and it's kind of funny because I feel like every time I open up Office on my iPad, it's so beautiful. I'm like, it makes me really look down on my PC version of Office. I'm so excited for them to, sort of unveil the new sort of Windows Store version of Office, because I want that pretty experience on my Windows device that I get on iPad or
iOS. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. So, okay. So then the next one, this one's kind of fun. This one makes me laugh because when I saw this one, my immediate response was, okay, Delve is now Pinterest for the workplace because now we can have boards. And so, Delve was released last year. And then this year, one of the first changes that they made is that you can group related content together inside of boards. And so when you're able to take a document and say, I'm going to add it to a board, and you can type in a name and it's going to autofill with other names that are there. So if someone's already maybe typed, like in this one, employee handbook, maybe somebody's already typed that, it's going to add it to that board. And then you're going to be able to look and see that content. I could not help but say that this was Pinterest for work. As soon as I saw it, I just kind of chuckled. I was like, okay then. So it's interesting. And they even called it boards, just like they did there. So I thought that one was interesting. Have you been able to play with this one at all, Dan?
Yeah, and I love this. And I think there's a couple of interesting sort of meta lessons that come into this. First, you and I know that this is a place Microsoft really listened. They were really thinking about sort of what do we call this? How do we structure it? We heard those discussions, and I think they came up with a great set of terminology. In effect, users are tagging content, and then you're able to filter the content, right? But rather than calling it tags and filters, which is uber geeky, they went with something people understand, which is the concept of adding to a board. And it's a new concept to Office, which means it is almost okay that there's no central management of it yet. It's not tied to your taxonomy, but yet, and I don't know if it's going to be or not, but it's not yet. But that's okay because it's a new feature. It's called something different. I think people will get it. And I do hope that, and I would expect that these boards then can be shared over the time. And it's going to be a way of curating content in the enterprise and making it available to teams and groups. I think this is a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, I like it. I can see where it's going. So the first thing I did when I got it was create a board. And then I created another board, and then I realized, I created one called Human Resources and one called HR, but there was no way to merge them together. And there was no way to delete a board or rename a board or anything like that. So that freaked me out just a little bit. So I know, but it was so hard. I was like, so close. But I loved how easy it was to use it. So I think that users are going to be able to go in. You need no training. You need no explanation. It makes sense. Then boards show up and it makes sense. I think they are going to hit some bumps, though, if you accidentally call it something or have to move things around. It can get a little bit tricky with that. But all in all, I think pretty interesting. It's I haven't really been in. I'd love to talk to a company that was using Delve every day. Like the only company that I've really seen that's like, and I'm sure they're out there, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean that it's doesn't exist. Like I know Microsoft uses it all the time, and whenever I'm with the folks from Microsoft and they're just kind of doing their day-to-day job, I actually do see them in Delve, not in the demo sites, but in their actual sites where they're doing stuff, and I see them working and using it. But it would be very interesting to see from the community, how is Delve impacting how people are actually working, because it's something that you don't really have to give a lot of training to. It's just supposed to be there and be a tool. So it'd be interesting to see. Have you gotten any feedback on anything like that, Dan, or any use cases where you've really seen it?
Not yet, for the same reasons. And Kathy is making some great points in the chat that are worth bubbling up for anyone watching the recording of this later. And that is, Delve and Office Graph really become valuable as you get more people in Office 365 and more content in Office 365. Because right now, that's where it's all at. Now, Microsoft has promised this year to make to make Office Graph and Delve support hybrid scenarios, which probably is going to mean Office Graph lives in the cloud. Your on-prem environment can feed signals into Office Graph, and then people can use Delve, obviously like they do now on-prem, pull information from both places. But right now, there's just not the critical mass yet. But I do think, and this is the other point Kathy made and you made, it's so awesome to see Microsoft create a feature that you can actually, with zero training, see what this is, how this is used, and what it might be useful for. That's really awesome.
Yeah. And I love the way that they didn't call it tags or filters. They called it boards. They called it something that was simple and easy for the end users to understand. It's a pin board. I've got my stuff there. It's great. It doesn't, and there's pros and cons to this. It doesn't follow the existing tagging structures. Tagging is going to be an interesting one to watch because it seems like every week they're announcing a new tagging thing that are all different. So I'm a little wondering what's going to happen with that. So I'm hoping to start to see some alignment with these different pieces. I think it'll be one of those things that 6 or 7 months from now, we'll look back and we'll go, oh, that's why they did that. We just don't have that big picture yet. So I'm hoping we'll start to see some of that, but it's very cool. I think I just love that they just showed up. Boards just showed up. It was just a blog post and it just showed up and now it's getting better. And so I like this idea of you don't have to wait for a ton of new features. It just kind of shows up and works. So I was very impressed with how they did this. And immediately after this, we had a couple of questions in the Yammer threads and some of the product team was responding directly to us. We had questions about deleting. So there's a thread out there about deleting the different things. And it actually turned into them asking, okay, well, what specific admin features would you need to see? And they said, they shared some of the stuff they were thinking and then said, well, we hadn't thought about it this way. So it was interesting to see that, they released it. It's in first release, but then they're immediately listening for that feedback. So definitely interesting stuff. I think we have
I think
two
Microsoft
more.
should add rename and delete to the MVP of any new feature.
Yes. You have to be able to undo it. I know we're running close on time, but I think we have just a couple of additional ones. I think so. Sway for iPhone. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Sway. That's actually what we're running today's presentation on. So I'm a fan of Sway. It's a little hard. I wish some of the extra features would be available. When you're going and editing it, there's some limitations and there's a whole bunch of teasers which say what's coming soon. But they've opened up the Sway for iPhone preview. So if you wanted to build a presentation directly from your iPhone, you would be able to do that now in the US, Canada, United Kingdom, and India. Before, I think it was only open to Australia. But they've just expanded that preview again. So it's interesting to see how even with these smaller apps, they're taking a very small subset of users and letting them try different things. And then they're expanding it out to a larger preview. So if you guys are interested in that, I just wanted to give you guys the link to say the new Sway has opened up for that. And then there were also some Office Online accessibility enhancements. So I know that this is very important to certain organizations or certain companies that have to meet these requirements and meet these standards. And so they've made 3 big changes. I think 2 of them really impact companies that have these requirements that they have to meet, but the 3rd change really impacts end users anywhere. So the first one is narrating formatting. So if someone was to narrate, the computer's narrating to you, it's going to let you know when there is a table. It's going to let you know when there's lists and different things like that. And then also you can use a virtual reader to read up to 3 pages without moving your cursor. So you can start it and it will read through the 3-page document completely through. The other one that I love, which I think applies to everybody, whether you really have accessibility concerns or anything like that you have to deal with, is this tell me option. So I don't know if you've used this one, Dan, but this has been there for a little bit. But up at the top in the web browser, above the ribbon, you see a little box that says, tell me what you want to do. And you can just start typing in whatever it is you want to do. And it's going to take you directly there or make the changes for you so that you do not have to navigate through the ribbon and all of the menu structures. So if I know I need to center the text, if I know I need to add bullets, if I know I need to do these different things, it's very helpful to do that and guide that through. So have you used that one at all, Dan?
Just to experiment with it. I'm enough of a power user in Office web apps to understand the features there. But again, Kathy's making a good point. Now I can definitely guess which Kathy this is, that there's a lot more coming in the accessibility space, that there's whole teams working on it. So that's good news.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorites. I'd say that if you have users that struggle a little bit with understanding Word, understanding Excel, understanding where any of these hard menu structures are, this tell me feature is going to guide them so much when they're trying to do it. So it is a great feature, and I totally think it would be great to spend some time getting some users, showing them how to use it, and then getting their feedback on it. And then one other thing, I know since people are kind of talking in the thread about some of the accessibility stuff, whenever you are in Word Online or OneNote Online, if you do Alt-Shift-A, it's going to bring up all of the accessibility features for you and kind of give you tooltips and guidelines for what's available. And so that's kind of a good tip or trick if you're in an industry that really has to look for those pieces. And then finally, I know we're running really close on time, but the last thing that we have is, this was a fun one that hit yesterday, I believe. With Access, they now have it to where you can write a macro that sends out an email. So this isn't quite necessarily workflows, but you can send notification emails directly from an Access app now. And so this is kind of a huge step forward in Access being able to fill the gap with some of these business solutions. So I don't know if you remember earlier, I said I was testing out some of the features, and a couple of them had a few more syntax and semicolons than what I was typically used to enjoying working with and going with, and this was one of those. So I'm still, the verdict's still out on this one. I don't know that it's necessarily a power user's tool. You have to know a lot about Access development, I think, to go in and do it, but I think it definitely opens up the opportunity for people to be able to build more complete solutions in Access. So I don't know, Dan, are you a big Access user? Or?
I was. I've taken a little step away from it, and during that time, they've really pimped it up, so to speak. And I think it's pretty clear that Access is the new power user development platform. It enables so much, and I think, and Microsoft's made it clear they're investing a lot in it. That I think if there were one tool that it would be valuable for an organization to start mastering,
I think so. And it's interesting when I've talked to people about Access web apps before. There's two things that have always been roadblocks, and one of them is being able to do security in the tables, and the other has been able to do simple notifications or workflows. And to be honest, a lot of the workflows are simply about notifying people when certain things are happening. And so this removes one of those barriers. Now, it won't remove every barrier, but it removes one obstacle in certain cases. And so it's definitely a very cool feature to see. And it makes you kind of wonder where they're going to be going next. And so I thought this was a really great new feature. So definitely going to keep digging into this one. So I think we are like really close on time. Lyman's probably going to be like, Jennifer, you went over. So I have so enjoyed having the show here with you today, Dana. It's been great. I thank you so much for coming out and hosting with me. I thank IT Unity for making this happen. We have got our next show scheduled, and so Kathy Dew has been in the chat room today giving out some great answers. Kathy is going to be my guest on the next show, which I believe is the 29th. I should know this. Yes, it's the 29th. And so I think on the closing slide, Lyman's going to give you guys that information about the next one. And this one should be recorded so that you guys can download it and catch it later. So I think awesome. So it has been a blast, Dan. I just appreciate you coming out and chatting with me. And hopefully this has been helpful to everyone. If you guys fill out the evals that we send out, we'll take your feedback and keep making it a better show. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jen. And thanks, everybody.